welcome everybody on behalf of Dream Launch and the panellists who were excited to be sharing their knowledge and wisdom and stories with you today. Very much aligns with what Dream Launch is all about, which is effectively helping people bring their ideas to life. And the fact is that these three experts have done a lot of that in terms of idea validation. And so we'll go over to you. We've got Hamed as well, who's the Managing Director of Dream Launch here. And we have sponsors here, I notice in the room now, David Hauser from Think Innovation, Tina Manalistis from Future Focus Marketing, and Miles from Suits and Sneakers. So thank you one and all, and over to you. I think the first case study, we're going to start with basically an introduction from each panellist, and then we'll go into the actual case study, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So feel free to add as much Q&A in terms of the chat box as you like, and we'll unmute you to ask the questions as well. So we're starting with Melissa, I believe.
Oh, yeah. So I'm Mel. I'm a business designer from Melbourne, and it's okay if you've never heard what business design is. Basically, it kind of evolved from the discipline of design thinking, and it's about applying insights for niche businesses or creating micro monopolies by looking at business model and business strategy and business positioning. And most of the clients that work with me either already are, or through working with me, become what's called a micro monopoly, which is basically they have a captive audience in a niche area, and we allow them to grow really fast by having a very clear idea and a clear way of connecting with their audience. So there's kind of 4 pillars of the way that I approach it, using a mix of competitive strategy, design thinking, trend analysis, and behavioral economics to kind of balance market needs with consumer insights and sort of brand friction. Are we going to go around and introduce each of ourselves? I don't know if...
Yep.
Linda, you want to go next?
Yeah,
yes,
no, happy. So my name's Linda Ginger. I'm a market strategist. I specialise in innovation, and I basically show entrepreneurs how they can discover, validate, and launch transformative opportunities. I've got more than 20 years experience helping businesses of all sizes across 3 continents actually find and launch ideas. I guess where my pivot point was in 2014, when I was continually getting frustrated with the traditional innovation methodologies that were out there. And I came across a data scientist who was also a venture capitalist out of Silicon Valley, who introduced me to a research project that started at Intel and Harvard Business School in 2006, which was researching why innovations fail. So I became the CEO of that organization, and a couple of years ago I decided that one of their little pieces of intellectual property was fantastic for the everyday business entrepreneurs that I work with. And now I use that in my practice, and I use the stage to, I guess, share the research. It's now more than a decade old, and those findings are really helping businesses actually get better outcomes on their innovation initiatives. That's me.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Ian Riley. I'm originally an engineer. I spent most of my career somewhere along the innovation journey, and now I help others really along that journey from wherever they're at the moment. I've spent most of my 30 years developing innovative solutions for challenging problems for global markets and turning those ideas and solutions into products. And I've mostly worked with companies in the United States, in Europe, and also Japan, designing their products for them. everything from small Silicon Valley startups through to some very large companies like GE and Coca-Cola. I've had a lot of successes, and I've probably made most of the mistakes that you can make. And successes included some winning international and national innovation and design awards. And then in 2014, I took some intellectual property from CSIRO and around virtual fencing for livestock. And I launched an agri-tech company startup, Adjasense. And so we took that from nothing really to developing the world's first product for automating the movement and control of livestock. So it enables a farmer to fence, move, and watch over their livestock from their smartphone or tablet. So now we raised over $25 million so far, and the company now employs 42 people with a large office in Melbourne and a research farm in Queensland. So I've probably used almost every idea generation technique available, including TRIZ and biomimicry, and going back years ago to De Bono's 6 hats. And they can be very helpful, but I found that getting the ideas is pretty cheap and easy. Picking ones that are going to be winners and seeing them through the journey through to create real customer and enterprise value is hard. And you'll see the article I published recently in a Smart Company called Creativity is Overrated, really talks about that journey, and that innovation is a journey rather than an event. So I'm hoping today that this event can help you make that journey a bit easier.
Thank you. So Melissa, you're going to start with the format is effectively case studies from each of you and insights and question and answers from both the panelists and anyone in the audience, as I said, through the chat box. So Melissa, did you want to start with your, you're talking about
Should I share my screen? Bring up the press?
Have we got the presentation?
Yes, if you can.
It says a host is disabled screen sharing, so I'm not able to. Cool. Hold on.
You should be able.
Yep, I can now. Give me 1 second. Just bring this on. Can everyone see Future Mood? Some sunglasses there? The bright green? Yeah, awesome. So the idea today is that we're each sharing a case study with an insight and a sort of a trigger question for our panelists to explore, so that we can see from our different vantage points all of the considerations that can come behind an idea and make or break its success, especially in this terms of that initial viability. So the insight that I've sourced is from the trend intelligence agency WGSN, and it is what are the crucial oh, hold on, sorry, that's the question. Give me 1 second, I'm on the wrong page. Here we go. Here we are. Niche brands are different yet still desirable and succeed in making people feel that they have connected with something special. I think that's a really interesting insight and applies very much to this brand. So Future Mood is a very, very new product that's out there. It's a range of sunglasses and they're marketed as wearable drugs. Future Mood's mood altering sunglasses, they want to be eyewear's next thing. That's their kind of position. And sold out products are suggesting their audience thinks so too. But of course, we can see that it's a really, really unusual proposition. So the co-founders met as part of a research initiative at high-end audio manufacturers Bose. So the product is really backed up by a lot of science. This is not just some kind of stoner conjecture approach. This is looking at creating a really, really unique product that has the potential to tap a new market for mood alteration. And the glasses are also made in partnership with the German optical giant Zeiss. So as insane as it may sound, the Aura sunglasses have been tested and clinically proven to alter your mood in 2 different clinical studies. There are 4 different aura products available, each in 2 styles. There's relaxing green, refreshing blue, and energizing red, and a focusing yellow. And the question that I want to pitch to our panel today is, what are the crucial considerations when it comes to appealing to the customers that will decide whether or not to buy what you sell? Alrighty. I'm happy to launch our decision off in how I would answer this question. So from my methodology's approach, I look at the business system and the brand system and how product ideas are going to fit into both of those, and how not only the idea, what features it needs to have, but also how you're going to execute it, because you might evolve your initial idea and your product to meet or overcome certain challenges that might be present in the market. So in my business system, based on those 4 points I was describing earlier from my methodology, the first area, which is design thinking, really looks at, is this idea interesting? Is it something that has that opportunity to do something new, do something for the first time, not in the gimmicky sense, but in the sense that it's going to capture attention, and capture attention that could result in purchase. We also look at alignment, so building layers and layers of competitive advantage from the discipline of competitive strategy, especially. Areas called like game theory, that kind of idea, the chess of sort of business. So you want to look at the marketplace. How is it going to react? You know, how for example, cannabis dispenser is going to react. How is the nootropic or smart drink beverage industry going to react to an entrant like this? What does it mean for that industry, and how might that affect your idea? We look at trend analysis, so you can see Future Mood have brought this into their brand quite heavily as well, this sort of streetwear, nearly psychedelic idea. But of course, glasses is something that you can take off straight away, and the impact that it has is reasonably mild. And so it's offering a potential gateway to exploration, and very much targeting that biohacking community. So you can see that what they've done is looked at their target audience and how they're going to react to the idea, and go, what can we do to position our brand that we're speaking to this audience, so they can see glasses not just as biohacking your vision for sharpness and clarity or to overcome a problem, but glasses as a point of enhancement above and beyond the whatever your baseline might be. And then the final is from the business sort of system side, is from the area of behavioral economics, and just looking at counterintuitive behaviors and how people actually behave, what kind of hesitations that they might have around a product and a position that are like this, and what can be done to make sure that those maybe concerns are alleviated, that any boredom, that we can engage them out of it, and just really understanding what people actually want, not just what they say they want, because those two things can be very different in market. From the brand system side, I look at sort of the shopper marketing funnel, but through the lens of niche business, micro monopolies, and once again, my methodology. But essentially that first step of exposure, where is this audience going to be? I love considering the trigger event that is going to encourage our audience to buy. So if I were to use deodorant as an example, when someone's going to buy a new deodorant product, there's some trigger event that means I'm going to go out and now buy it. I don't just buy it for the sake of buying it. So your customer is putting themselves into the supermarket, whatever kind of supermarket it is that target audience go to, they're putting themselves in the deodorant aisle and they're looking at that section. So you want to understand where they are to be in that section as well. And that can affect the way that you might package your product. It can affect the shape and size of your product depending on where you're going to expose your audience to discover your product for the first time. The next stage is they're looking at that. Say the reason they were triggered to buy this deodorant is they had streaky marks on their existing product. If there was a product on the shelf that had, like, say, a black deodorant with streaky marks on it, that consumer is actually most likely to pick that up. And in this step, brand does most of the heavy lifting. And the point of brand isn't to look nice or to look cool. It's to signal to that audience with that particular moment of concern that I am what you're looking for. And when you start understanding what your audience is actually looking for and what's triggering them to buy, it can affect how you actually create and develop your suite of products as well. So how your products fit together in a family if there's multiple, and also how you create that one product as well. If your brand successfully signals to the customer, I'm what you're looking for, I'm right for you, your customer will pick it up off the shelf, or if they're looking for a product online, they'll click for more information. And at that point, what they're looking for is not just any kind of more information or a thesis on your topic. They're looking for information that's relevant, once again, to their concern of why they're buying. And most of the people just jump into features and benefits and that kind of thing. But with your product idea, you want to look at, once again, what is driving them to buy and reinforcing that with the way that your product looks, but the way your product feels. Then looking at answering their objections around why they might not buy. So if you go through the Future Mood website, there's a lot of kind of content that explains, we've said wearable drugs to capture your attention, but this is actually what we mean when we say that. And they back it up with the clinical studies. They show the relative intensity compared to other things, and they use that to soothe their audience. And so this informs the idea itself, the product, and also the way that that product is executed. And then with features and benefits, we look at tying all of the competitive advantages inherent within that idea with the customer and what they're looking for. And it's not just what's great about my idea or just what the customer wants. It's the place where those two things meet. So you're tying what the customer is desiring with an inherent thing that only your business or your idea can offer them. And I find that really powerful. And all of those are quite well captured, I think, in this case study. That's kind of from my angle. And if Linda and Ian, you want to jump in, and I'd love to hear insights from both of your areas.
Yeah, I think, from my point of view, if I was looking at this to say, is this something I want to, Future Mood to invest in? I think the critical thing I'd like to know is what the pain point is that the target market is feeling. So what is their pain, and address that pain. This product could have a whole variety of different incarnations. It could be a medical device, in which case you sell it to people who are providing therapy, or to consulting psychologists, or to hospitals. Could be a whole range of different markets and different customers there that you could sell it to. I think fundamentally, if you wanted to know, you'd have to look at, does it work? And I'm guessing from the studies that have been done that it does. And then, what market are we going to reach with that, and what is the sort of product that that market wants to buy. So one embodiment is a stylish, mood-altering set of glasses that you use at home, but there could be a whole lot of other embodiments and ways of actually using that core technology of altering mood, depending on what the pain point is of your target customer segment.
I guess from my perspective, I totally agree with you, Ian. I've sometimes changed my language about a problem, because sometimes it can be a problem that we're trying to overcome, but it might also be that, or the question is, what is the job that these glasses are achieving?
Mm. Yeah. What's the job it's doing?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It is just that subtle different language, because when you know what the job that it does, you can actually then start seeing who the market is that makes up that job to be done. So, which could lie a really disruptive way of going to market, for example. So the next thing that I would do is to go, what is that value chain of that market, the job to be done? What's the market? And get inputs from that market to explore how influential it might be across that whole market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point, because where you position yourself on that value chain will dictate what product you're offering and how you offer it.
And when you look at what the job to be done for existing glasses are, it kind of highlights the two audiences that I'm aware that this brand actually targets to. One is the existing job to be done is to correct a deficiency of vision and improve vision up to a baseline. So it's taking from deficiency to average. Whereas these are looking at taking that average to that next sort of level. So in that sense, it's a competitor. It's targeting the biohacking audience, and it's a competitor to things like CBD dosage in coffees or nootropic smart beverages, binaural beats to get you in the flow for focusing and work. And then we have the other audience, which is more of the kind of psychedelic audience that are looking for a euphoric type experience, and that's their other market. And if you look once again for the job to be done within that existing audience, what you have is a lot of concerns and fears around being out of control, or what level of, how long it might last in the body, or perhaps toxic side effects of products. Whereas with glasses having this much more mild effect, it's an opportunity to explore altered states of consciousness and enhanced sort of cognitive functioning without taking you sort of out of your comfort zone as well. So I think that I love when you talk about what the job is to be done, Lisa, because it kind of really takes it back to that core point of what is this idea really doing, and I really love that.
Yeah, and then you can see who the real competitors are, because
yeah, absolutely.
People sometimes only think about direct competitors, where there, as you mentioned, there's those substitute competitors as well that are doing the job. Yeah, no, I love that phrase too. It's amazing. It gives you a different perspective.
Actually, your core target market might be family members who want to make their family life more pleasant by having their other family members, like their teenage kids, wear the right set of glasses.
It's true. And novelty has a real function in lasting sustainable business ideas as well. Like novelty and gimmick aren't necessarily the same thing. They certainly can be, but I think there's a place for humour to be a really amazing brand position and source of inspiration for product ideas as well. Do we want to do questions on
Melissa, we're getting quite a few questions actually.
Alrighty, let me just...
One of the key ones is really around market research from a couple of people around how has market research and strategy shape design, and what is the best way to understand the size of the audience that needs something like that?
Yes, absolutely. Because you don't want to pick an audience that's so niche that no one's actually going to buy your product and you can't create a sustainable business. And not only that, the audience sizes, you need to be able to access that scale of audience as well. I think for the first perspective, when I'm looking at how market research is informing an idea, obviously I'm wanting to check those four boxes around, is it interesting? Is it competitively aligned? Is it resonating? And is it engaging customers in how they actually behave? But also another consideration I have is if you kind of imagine a Venn diagram of one circle is the customer, one circle is the market, and one circle is the brand. A challenge that I see, or something that's problematic that I see in how a lot of innovators and entrepreneurs approach idea making is they focus on only one of those circles or maybe a pair of them. So, for example, if you're just focusing on the customer, all of the ideas and all of the business kind of ideas will actually converge to the same point, because you'll ultimately be doing the same thing, which is serving their particular need. And ultimately, if you really extend a customer's need, they may not require a business to solve their problem, especially outside of kind of medical concerns. They might just want to solve it themselves in an affordable way, whatever their challenge is. You also, if you think about a brand like IKEA, where they definitely deliver products that are great for the customer, but they don't just listen to what the customer is saying. And in my experience, definitely observing customer behavior is really important, because they ultimately do buy what you sell. But if you're only listening to what they say, and especially what they say as opposed to observed behaviors, what can happen is in general, I think customers, for the most part, when you ask them, they don't really know what they want or what is possible in the way that an entrepreneur or an innovator can see. They don't say what they think and they don't do what they say. And that can lead to ideas focusing too much on the customer and not actually having any of that market friction. The reason I bring IKEA up is because in any sort of major city where they are, they're a little bit out of the way. You have to try to get there. You have to walk through an absolute maze to get through it, where you get exposed to all of these products. That's not in the customer's interests at all, but it is so powerful for the business itself. So there's a role that the brand plays, and then there's a role of the marketplace as well. If we move to another section of the Venn diagram and you just focus on the needs and the shifts of the marketplace, you often can get ideas of what I call, here today, gone tomorrow. And that's not to say that when we look at the marketplace, where of course we're looking for trends that are going to last and we're looking for factors that are worth moving into, absolutely. But what happens, and I see this all the time, and if there's any VCs or investors in this audience or other strategists, I imagine that you see this as well. Ideas transported, and this inherently isn't a bad thing, but ideas transported pretty much verbatim from other countries or other states to our audience, and that can be a really powerful thing. But what happens is when your idea is just focusing on what the market is doing or what the market is needing, your idea is always following what other people are doing, and you're not understanding the full complexity of all of the other factors that are happening there. And what happens is maybe a year on, that business just kind of dies, or you have like year-on-year losses of sales. So that happened to Dinner by Heston when it came to Melbourne as well. It transported the concept from England, and that was really great and exciting, but it didn't continue to deliver on its core promise and bring innovation and bring newness to that promise as well. So there's a time of, how will this product's promise evolve over time? How might it expand? Is it additional products? Is it changes to the product? Is it additional use cases or audiences? And you want to kind of think about those things as well. And then the final is, if you're only focusing on your idea itself, you can have a lack of product and market fit. So an idea that you've put so much work into and then it just doesn't sell like you imagine it to. And that's another thing I see all the time. Because the thing is as well, you can have a great idea, but many roadblocks exist between a validated idea and getting it out there, and also the idea and validation itself. So I hope that kind of answers the question around the considerations that I have when I'm doing my market research.
Yeah, look, someone was asking too, like, which, to your point, how much education do you think the audience needs for a product like that?
Yep, I probably wouldn't use the word education. If you've heard of value propositions and these kinds of ideas and educating the audience, I find that terminology can sometimes be either too narrow or too vague, the opposites. I like to use the word impact. So it's how is your idea impacting that person's life? And what role does that impact play? And then how clearly are you communicating that impact? So instead of educating the customer on how to use it, it's about clarifying the impact really clearly. And that comes, when I was describing that sort of shopper marketing funnel, they know you, they see you on that shelf, they pick your product up off that shelf because your brand is resonating with them and speaking to them. And at that point, they're looking for more information. And I find it just needs to hit 3 steps that cross over with your business's benefits and competitive advantage and your audience's desire. And essentially, if you can hit those 3 things, I've been able to make, cold, say 7 figures, pretty much sales, and create those new relationships just because I've hit the exact right notes and I've positioned it in a way where I'm the only one that can deliver on the thing that they want, and I'm knowing that they're wanting that impact, exactly why that impact is important to them, and then positioning and communicating that impact sort of effectively. So if you're doing it well, lots of education isn't necessarily needed, but in any sales funnel, I think you always need to make sure you are clarifying that impact clearly in a way that's sort of relevant to your audience.
Yeah, okay. Someone's just asked a question. What are the 3 steps to summarise?
3 steps to summarise. So many steps there. I would say 4 steps, and looking at, or if I was going to do 3 steps, it would be looking at that customer fit, the market fit and the idea, and where those three things coalesce together. But from my methodology, I actually have 4 insights, which is, is this idea interesting? Is this idea competitive, especially in a sustainable sense? Is this idea relevant to its audience? And is this idea engaging the audience in how they actually behave? For example, if you were to educate your customers on, for the streaky armpit group, these 1,800 word weekly essays on armpit health, that's actually not relevant to them, and it's not engaging them in the way that product fits into their life sort of as well.
Cool. Look, there will be time at the end, and we go past 1:30 if people got even more questions, but we need to move on and have I think now it's Ian going to talk about Agasense and what he did there around developing that idea.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a good idea, covering something that is radically new. So it started back in 2011. I was visiting a property in central Queensland that was associated with my family, and the farmer took me for a tour, as they like to do, and he was talking about his problems trying to optimise his productivity by moving his livestock around that property, depending on where they were, depending on soil type, on seasonal variation, on the vegetation that was growing at the time, and of course how much rainfall you had and so on. And so that was quite difficult, A, because it was just him and his son working on the farm. He couldn't afford to employ any more labour, and putting in fences on, a 50,000 hectare property was quite extensive as well. So what he really needed was a system that would automate the movement of those cattle around the property during the year, depending on what he needed to do without any labour or fencing. So I thought a crazy solution would be if the animals could wear an ear tag or a collar, and that would then, thanks guys, an ear tag and a collar that would then locate that animal, and then use some sort of unpleasant sensation, such as a annoying sound or something like that, that would deter them from crossing a virtual boundary defined by GPS coordinates. So the farmer would then use their phone or their computer to actually draw these grazing areas on their property, and then the cattle would stay there, and by moving the grazing areas they could move their cattle around from their tablet. So I thought this was pretty crazy, but I thought I would call it a virtual fence. So one day I typed virtual fence into Google, and it turned out this idea was not new. It had been around for about 30 years. In fact, there were all sorts of academic articles about it and presentations, and there was even an ABC national news segment on YouTube featuring the whole 5-year CSIRO research program into developing a system that did that. So it sort of created a lot of questions. One was, would the idea work? And that was sort of answered by CSIRO, but also, was this a real market need, or was this a market with just one customer, being the guy in Queensland I went and visited? So I went and investigated what CSIRO had done, and searched for a product, because I thought, well, there's all this stuff going on for 30 years. There must be a product out there ready to go that my friend could buy. And there wasn't. In fact, there wasn't anything anywhere. So I thought, well, this could be an opportunity. I went and got a relationship with CSIRO, and eventually got some funding and launched Agasense in 2014. And we developed the product called eShepherd. And I'll just show you a current version of the collar that's worn. So this is a unit that sits on the animal. If we can just go down to the next slide, Alex, so you can see the collar there in the picture, and the farmer using a tablet, and those cattle are all wearing these collars. And so it now operates in Queensland. And we have a worldwide distribution agreement with our investor partner Gallagher, And as I mentioned before, we've now got 42 people employed in the company. So we did turn that into a product. It was a journey of 6 years to date from 2014 onwards, but overall, going back to CSIRO's work in 2004, it's really been a 15-year journey to market. So the insight I had there was, maybe you go to the next slide and I'll just show the image of the device as it works. So it's an Internet of Things system where the farmer uses their smartphone or tablet in 0.5. There's a base station on the farm which is internet connected. Animals wear a neckband and they use GPS positioning. So that's the system in a nutshell, a typical Internet of Things device. The insight I had was from one of my clients years ago who was quite a famous entrepreneur in Belgium called Rudy Pauwels. Rudy developed a treatment for HIV. And he said to me once, if you want successful ideas, look for a need, then go and look for an idea that meets that need. And while that is really simple, it is so difficult to do sometimes, particularly when we're caught up in technology and the strength of our ideas. And the question was that I've faced throughout my entire career is, I've got a great idea. How do I know it's actually going to work? And what do I do about that? Yeah. So my answer to that question is you don't know if it's going to work. But the most important thing to focus on initially is what is the need that it addresses, and is that need big enough? If you've got a big enough need, you can always get funding and money to develop that. And so part of that is getting enough to take a step in the right direction, doing initial research, take a step forward, decide whether you need to go further or not, or it's worthwhile. And if so, take another step forward and keep going in that direction. So in my case, I started by, it's an idea, I'll do some research, I'll find out what CSIRO have done, and gradually more and more information provided me with the opportunity and the, I guess, certainty that it was worth pursuing further. There was no guaranteed success at the end of the day at any point. Just the visibility is improved and I can move to the next step. I have questions.
So anyone from the panel want to make any comments?
I love this idea because I come from a dairy farm background. And I have seen lots and lots of technology advancement in the sort of the farming area. So it appeals to me in lots of ways, and I'm so pleased it was successful. I was going to say, what were the main competitors to the product? I mean, besides, I guess, you know, the traditional fences that farmers spent lots of time installing.
Yeah. Well, on one level, there is no competitor because it is a world first product. So it's the only product to come out and be available today that you can buy. On the other hand, there is the incumbent technologies, no other competitors. So the incumbent technologies are, I can hire a ringer to work on my property on horseback. I can hire people to muster on helicopters. I can build fences. I can run electric fences for long distances, although that's pretty difficult in this environment in Queensland. Or, you know, various other ways of managing cattle. Barbed wire fences was one of those ways. Yeah, there's a whole lot of other needs that I discovered here as well, one of which is riparian management and management of nutrient runoff into rivers that goes onto reefs and so on. So there's a huge need there around fireproof fencing as well, and flood-proof fencing, because Australian rivers flood, and, you know, last year, they had a massive event up north in Queensland where they lost 500,000 head of cattle and millions of dollars worth of fencing to flood. So they are the incumbent technologies that are the competitors currently.
I think this case study brings up two kind of ideas for me that I think are really interesting to explore and that this product nails so well. One of them is the audience's appetite for innovation as well. So when the job's being done and you're doing it a new way for the first time, the size of that need and that problem to be solved, as well as the user base's comfortableness with new ideas, will affect how much that idea is going to be adopted. Because we see things like Google Glasses, where the technology for wearable, glasses is there, and with augmented reality, but people are too weirded out by it. It's too far into the future. But also, there isn't enough of a strong need to be solved that's pushing people over that edge. And then the other kind of consideration that I think is really well met by this product as well is how likely is the customer and how to part with money for that idea to be solved as well. So when we create a solution to a need, the need could be large, but is the customer actually realistically going to buy whatever it's going to cost for your product to sell as well? And I think this need is so large, and the amount of money that can be saved as well really builds such a strong, obvious, clear, interesting case for this.
Yeah.
And we're getting a lot of questions, actually. It's generated a lot of interest from ideas around why don't we have, replace manned helicopters with drones. Another couple of questions around funding, like how did you make the first step to get funding? Lessons learned. I think we're going to have to send some of these questions to you after the event because there's so many of them.
This happens a lot. I think Melissa raised a very good point that's worth addressing for a lot of people, because I think this is, part of the myth about doing market research. And that is, when I went out to talk to farmers initially, the first thing I did when I got some money was actually go and do market validation study and go and talk to farmers. Probably 80% of those farmers would say, I wouldn't spend the money to buy this now, but I can see that in 30 years' time, I'd probably do that. And the reason is that it is very new and it addresses, it's like a mobile phone in the sense that a trader uses a mobile phone differently to an executive at BHP. They have different needs. The trader is not traveling overseas regularly, but they need to get to their customers. So it's the same product, but it meets a different need and a different pain point. And so in our case, a large portion of the market today is not ready to buy the product because they don't know exactly how it's going to be implemented, how they're going to get the return on investment, what their pain point is, or any of that. But the small number of the 2% of innovators who desperately want it and have real problems, that 2% worldwide is a huge market that will keep us busy for the next 20 years. And so that's the market that we're focusing on. The other 98%, we just keep informed at the moment. We're not really bothered by the fact that they don't want to buy it or they're not ready to buy it yet.
The early adopters.
Yeah. And every market, every product I've seen has that. What is the market you go to first, with what, and how do you get it in the marketplace and demonstrate it and accept it and prove it before it takes off? Yeah.
So there's a theme here around people wanting to know about, the capital investment required at each step and the funding. But there's also a technical question that's coming through from one person, Mark, who wanting to know about other verticals for the application. He seems to think that it could be used for very, very many other verticals. in terms of
Yeah.
traceability and so on.
The vertical we're not targeting is, can I use it to manage my wife or my teenage children or
For
husband?
your husband.
So that is a stunningly common market need. So maybe address the funding one. One of the things is, to a certain extent, you know, we can say we got a bit lucky at the start, but luck happens with serendipity, or happens when you're prepared. So I had investigated the problem, got a relationship with CSIRO, established, you know, that I wanted to do it, talked to a lot of people, asked for money, got nothing, applied for grant programs, got nothing. And then one day, the Victorian government issued an offer of a grant to solve a problem for the catchment management authorities, which was, how do we keep cattle out of rivers and waterways without building fences that get washed away every year? Because the government spends $10 million a year doing that, and then they lose it in a flood. So that was quite a niche problem. CSIRO, because I already had the relationship and already had a partner ready to go, we tendered for that and won the grant with CSIRO as a partner. And then following that, there was supposed to be follow-on grant funding. The government changed, they cancelled the whole program, and so we were left with nothing. But I had done a feasibility study that was about 85% of that effort was all market validation. So then I worked on my own. I spent another 9 to 10 months. I went around the world talking to everyone who might need it, talking to prospective strategic investors like the big dairy companies, the National Farmers Union in the UK, MIT, US Department of Agriculture, a whole lot of people. And I had set up an advisory board, and I positioned the company for more funding. We got more funding from in a sort of administrative brown paper bag that I won't go into, but the catchment management authorities who originally put up the initial grant got together some money and said, we want you to start work because we really want the product. I used that to leverage a matching Commercialisation Australia grant, and then part of that grant was to bring on a strategic partner. So during that time, I used that money to engage with Gallagher and a range of other partners. Gallagher came on as a strategic partner and investor, and using that, we leveraged our first round of financial investment, which was $2 million.
Gallagher is the innovation company by New Zealand, isn't it?
Yeah, so they are like a premium brand Mercedes version of electric fencing.
Oh, right, okay, them, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Alex, which is sort of...
Yeah, so I think we probably need to go on to Linda because the time's starting to fly.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd love to promote the idea of looking at CSIRO and the universities for base intellectual property to help people fast track ideas. So that we might have to do that another time, because I think that's a real opportunity.
You're on the board of UniQuest, definitely.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
So yes, if we could go to Linda, perhaps to talk about your data science.
Yeah, so I actually started with an insight which I just found or revisited recently, which is on the screen there. And it sort of fits into the whole idea of idea validation. And I don't know whether everyone's familiar with CB Insights. It's a technology platform that collects data about private and public companies that can provide insights. And if anyone hasn't registered for that website with its amazing daily emails, you should definitely do so. But one of the things they found was that when they did a post-mortem of 101 startups that had failed, the founders nominated, the number one reason why they believe their startup failed was the no market need, which I find quite astounding. I sort of thought, it doesn't surprise me that it's a big number, but for a founder to nominate that there was no market need is the thing that fascinates me the most, particularly when a lot of these startups that were part of the post-mortem had got venture capital money, and so you wonder at what part of the process, was it only at the post-mortem that they recognised that, or was it somewhere beforehand? And how might they have been able to change that? So I guess my case study really addresses this need, that I think there needs to be something out there to help people be able to validate their idea far easier. I guess that points to, we want startups or existing businesses that are launching new ideas to have more confidence that their idea actually has a scalable or delivers on a scalable market need. We also need to know that if they realise that there needs a pivot, so that we're pivoting it to that scalable market need, we can also do that as well. And obviously we want to save the waste of trillions of dollars that go to innovation every year, and enable more businesses to be successful. I think I remember seeing the statistics of startups, for example, and anyone can do a Google search on this. It is an astounding number, and I've seen it happen, is 95% of all startups around the globe fail. Professor Clayton Christensen also cites that number in his research. Mergers and acquisitions on average fail to return what they were intended to do, and fail at 85%, along with consumer packaged goods. So that's the thing we're trying to solve here. So my case study is about validating an idea, and it was for a business, an existing business that, or an entrepreneur who owned a business. He'd owned it for 15 years. It's in the engineering consulting space, and for anyone who knows the building and construction industry, there's certainly been a lot of consolidation from global players that has made this marketplace extremely competitive. So the business owner had an idea that he'd been thinking about for 2 years. And the idea was a technology solution that he saw as something to help him compete in his own business. And I remember when I first asked him, you know, why haven't you done something with this idea? His response was that he didn't know where to start. He said, I think it's a good idea, but I don't know what to do next or who to trust. And I've probably found that to be one of the things that I see a lot of for small business, which is such a pity when they contribute so much to the Australian economy, that so many are too scared or don't know how to go about launching ideas, and they can't then adapt and actually still contribute the the value that they can to the Australian economy. So how we'd go about validating this idea in the past would have been to use traditional market research, and that's something that I've been doing for more than 20 years. And as I mentioned in my intro, I started getting really disillusioned with traditional market research, mainly because it took such a long time to do. It certainly is costly, and there is, now that I know a different way, there's certainly some inaccuracies about traditional market research. So we went on to validate this gentleman's idea within 24 hours, in actual fact. And we used a methodology that uses data science to quickly get a sense of the value chain in the market and find out where the most influential areas are within that market. So there's no point responding to a something that the market wants if it only influences the market at 20%. We want to be able to find and launch ideas where there's really high market influence. So say, for example, in this occasion, there was 51 things that were identified that the market wanted. That's the value chain wanted. 13 of the things that were identified were solved by this product or idea. And beautifully, four of those 13 things were sat within over 90% within that market that it did. So that was one little tick that we could go, hey, look, we think you're onto something here. But just the fact that there is a market need doesn't mean anything. So we know that through the research that I mentioned before is that if there's certain market conditions at play around a new idea, your probability of success of surviving is at 14%, which is really low odds. But we can increase those odds to around 67% if we apply certain strategies to that idea. So that's the whole focus of another part of data science research, that we look at applying to that idea so that we can optimize its probability of success. For this particular idea, because it is off the back of an existing business, there is one critical thing that an existing business who might have a disruptive idea, they must make that idea autonomous to of their existing business. So if it disrupts, they must make that idea have its own autonomous life, because the research shows that in year 3 to 5, an existing business who has a disruptive idea that it's trying to nurture will get killed. And it makes logical sense too, because once you start impacting the margin or that core business in any way, its natural thing is to survive, and they usually throw it out. So for this particular idea, it does actually disrupt his own current business. So he set up a separate business that operates autonomously to develop and launch that particular idea. The other strategic external factors that we must consider. So just to go back again, so we're going, hey, rah, it meets a market need and it's in the highly influential, great. But there are other external factors that influence the way that we would maybe create a business model or use or see what technologies that might be able to help. Because this idea has lots of competitors in the market, it responds well. We'll be able to increase its probability of success if we choose a strategy around being a low-end entry point into the market. And a low end means that it must be cheaper and it must also be lower performing. So think of Datsun. When Datsun entered the market in the 1950s, it was cheap and nasty, but it was better than walking. And when you actually enter the market in a low-end way, you go virtually unnoticed by the competitors in the marketplace, and of which this product does actually have some high-end competitors. So if you enter in the low-end way, your competitors, or those high-end competitors, dismiss you, as Holden and Ford did to Datsun way back then. But you've got your eyes set on improving that product over time after you've adopted a mass following and incrementally improve it over time. So again, this is what we did to this idea. We're just looking at the different various business models, looking at what is the one single thing that we can solve that is in a low-end way for the market. And so we've done that as well. And also the other thing that we need to make sure is that we're developing this product in minimal viable product. Now, why I can't disclose to you who this company is right at the moment, next month I'll be able to disclose that to you because we're actually launching the minimal viable product in September. And we've got some early adopters of using the technology who are giving us feedback. And I must say, even till today, when we're about probably a month out from launching, we actually haven't determined precisely what the actual product. We've got ideas too, but we're testing those now to go, is this the product that will give us mass adoption so we can incrementally go upstream after that. So yes, so trying to help businesses get the confidence to take their ideas forward. So as I said, this guy who owns a business had an idea. He was sitting on it for 2 years. It so happens that when we validated that idea, it's actually got global resonance. So this product can actually be a global solution with a few changes. And we're able to pivot, augment it, so that it actually increased its likelihood of success based on the research that started at Intel and Harvard in 2006. So my question, I guess, is there any bad ideas?
It's a crazy question.
Yeah. My view is that my top of mind view is, yeah, there are plenty of bad ideas.
It's interesting because to answer that question, I used to think there was bad ideas, and I probably have heard one really bad idea, and that is like you can knit cat fur together to make jumpers. That I think seriously that is a bad idea. But it does make me think that there's a lot of ideas that are actually good ideas. They just don't know how to be better executed. So if we can harness ideas and give them the right business model, the right technology to go to the market with, and we can increase their odds of surviving, then maybe there's no real bad ideas out there just posing.
If you want to study bad ideas, there's a Japanese society called the Chindagu Society, which develops products that are almost useless. They have to have some utility, but be almost useless. So one of them is, for example, slippers that you put on your cat, which when the cat walks around the floor, it cleans the floor.
Good point.
Or butter in one of those adhesive tubes so that you just scrape your butter on your bread without using a knife. It just comes
like
in
Vegemite these days.
like
Yeah,
glue,
Vegemite does the same.
Yeah, but anyway, if you want to study some bad ideas, that society has plenty of them.
Yeah.
I think your case study is really interesting, Linda, when paired with that question around do bad ideas exist. If we specifically look at challenger brands entering when there's incumbents in the industry at that low price point, and the Datsun kind of version of that model, there's an entry strategy called a value chain reconfiguration. It's what Aldi did to success in Australia, and essentially you come in at this cheap price point with a lower quality offering, and at that point only the most value driven consumer of that market will come and buy from you. But what happens is not only are you're incrementally improving your product and working out how to challenge, like you're starting off in a sense with some aspects of badness as a deliberate move. Yes. But then what happens is once you start improving your product and expanding your range and going after those higher value customers, all of the incumbents can't actually compete directly because you've worked out how to scale in the most affordable way possible. And it just gives you such an edge for profit margin. And we saw Woolworths and Coles scramble in Australia to offer everyday low price strategies for several years. It's only kind of just fading away now to react to that shift of consumer, kind of that showrooming of, if I can buy these two things and they're both equivalent quality now, I'm going to go for the one that's cheaper. And Aldi were able to offer that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've nailed it. That's
Really powerful.
exactly the thing. And I mean, at any point, you've got to be able to, as you do in any agile environment for launching products, is to be able to, you know, you're always looking to validate or invalidate. So this gentleman, he did a proof of concept, and we use that proof of concept as the first thing. I'd call it ugly beta, which was just a video basically to show them what is possible, to get people excited about how much value with this. Now, at that point, there's not much money spent. If you'd gone and built the whole technology vision that you saw, you know, you're not only are you pivoting and turning at the time that you need to, but you just would have wasted a whole lot of money. And that's what we want to reduce, that investment cost that people are making, and just minimally increase it. Always be considering that validating, invalidating. And there's always technical risk too. I mean, it might be something in the technology that makes it fail too. So that's
most likely
another consideration.
I guess it's like, are you self-aware about the bad aspects of your idea, and how are you going to integrate those improvements if necessary?
Yeah, no, I'll end on one thing, and I can see some questions, and I'll be happy to go back and answer these ones. What I was going to say, and I've just lost the thought, was the first launch point. Why we love to do that validation and know, you know, whether it's 20% or 90%. We're looking for the entry point that is the mainstream basis of competition for a particular market. So we know that that's highly valued. Then you've got to go, what's the business model that can exploit that high value product so we can actually get mass adoption?
Can I just make a comment on your insight, Linda, around, you know, why startups fail, being there was no market need. I actually think that there normally is a market need. It might be small, but there are so many important things to get right about how to reach that market that it often gets interpreted as the market wasn't ready for it, or it was too small or whatever. One of them is route to market. One of them is positioning the product in the market, and all those other issues that a startup that's trying to launch a new product has to make decisions about that actually critically affect that. And a good example is the electric light bulb. I mean, Edison is the inventor. Well, he wasn't the inventor, but a lot of people thought there was no market need for electric light bulbs in, 1885 or whenever it was he did it. And they were right. There was no market need in 1885 for electric light bulbs because we had gas and candles. What do we need one of those for? And there was no way to power it because there was no reticulated electricity. Plus, they only lasted like 10 hours. Then you had to buy a new one. So if you go and done the market research, would come soundly back saying this is a bad idea. Don't make a new light bulb. There's no market for it.
Well, the interesting thing, people ask the wrong question when they do market research. That's what got me frustrated, because they're asking people whether they want. People don't know what they want, but they do know what they want to experience.
Yeah.
So, do you think Henry Ford went out and went, "Do you want this thing that's got, an engine?" Well, they would have gone, "No, we just want to get there faster and more comfortably." It was up to him to actually put a solution forward, and he had lots of competition. He just solved the mass production thing. But anyway, people didn't know that that's what they wanted. He had to create that, but they knew what experience they wanted.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Linda, there's a couple of questions there. Given that we're 10 minutes past 1:30, one question was actually a pretty fundamental question around your pricing for your methodology.
Mm-hmm. So I can do this in advisory or actually use the product. So the product is that goes over 48 hours. That's $20,000. But in lots of cases, it's just really an advisory role to help people. And And hence why I like actually doing these sorts of talks, even though we haven't got much time, because when you understand the science, and I can show you what that looks like on just a one-page document, you can then actually start evaluating your own ideas and know how to pivot and turn them. So. Okay.
Is that something you'd like to share with the audience?
I don't think I've got it up on my screen at the moment, but I definitely can. If you want to do a time when I can explain that, I'll be more than happy to, Alex.
Okay, the one-page document. Another question here was, how many pivots do you need to execute on bad ideas, and how cost-effective can that be?
So with some of the companies that I've worked for, sometimes I put a limit on how much they're prepared to cost to make something work as a means to do that. But if you keep getting, I don't think you should put a number to it. I think if you get an invalidation, how can you turn that? If you get to a point where that you're all out of how you might pivot that, I think give up. But sometimes the best thing to do is to be able to go, I'm not spending any more than X dollars on trying to get this to work, specifically if it's a strategic sort of idea that you're working on.
Yeah, so if anyone's got any other questions, by all means, you can unmute yourself. I don't know if you saw any other questions in there. I think Annie Chen had a lot of really interesting things to say. I don't know whether Annie's still here. Though.
Hi. Yes, I am. Thank you so much to the panel. It has been an amazing, it's been an amazing conversation. My question to the panel really is, there's a lot of investment that goes into an idea. When do you know? Yeah, I mean, the fact that you have to validate it and then, or invalidate it, and see if you can pivot it. If you've invested like 3 years in developing a product, but because it sort of started with a customer need, when do you know to kind of, is this when you need an advisor like yourself, Linda? Where do we start to sort of, validate that idea and know if it needs to be given up on or if we can turn it? Because it's your baby, you're emotionally attached to it now.
Yeah, it's just the easiest way is it.
I can't hear Linda. Is that?
I can hear you now, Ian, but I can't hear Linda.
Oh, here we go. I think sometimes we've got to look at the business model. So you can have a myriad of different business models with technology now. There's not just one route. And I even just because I am on the board at the University of Queensland in their commercialisation area, one of the questions I get to ask is, so this one piece of IP that's going to be used for that idea, how many different ways could that idea be executed in a different business model? So there's not always one path to launching an idea. But I think the key is you've got to be in the most influential area in a market. Like this gentleman, he will democratize one whole level of the marketplace. Not immediately, but over time, it will actually wipe out one level of the market.
Yeah, so Annie, what I would say is one way to look at it is as you learn more and more about the market and your concept, because you can market validation is something that you do in layers. You do an initial one and then you do it again and then you do it again. And if you're running a startup, you probably need to do that quite frequently each year to better understand the market and engage more and more with customers. If you find that the more you go down that pathway, the market is shrinking, and the barriers are increasing, that's a bad sign. If you go down the pathway and you find that the market is growing and the opportunities are growing and the barriers to get there are shrinking, then that's a good sign to keep going forward. Yeah. But, you know, I could go name in the first 6 months with AdsenSe how many barriers I got. So one of them, for example, was an investor that I knew well, that I happened to sit with on a plane by accident going from Brisbane to Sydney. I explained what I was doing, and he was a cattle owner. He had 5,000 Wagyu cattle in Victoria. And he said to me, I guarantee you that not a single farmer in Victoria will buy this product. Yeah. So that was really encouraging. So 6 months later, I met him again and I said, well, I've got a whole group of farmers, including Dairy Australia, Meat and Livestock Australia, plus a whole group of government organisations and the statutory authorities who want to invest millions of dollars in this product. And then he said, well, I can see that you might sell some to those guys, but you won't sell to any other farmers.
I think, Anne, I was going to say one of the things I find that people don't do, and Ian, that was fabulous. We always got those barriers. One of the things I don't think we can do enough of is asking our customers. We don't ask them enough questions. We don't get enough feedback from them. If that's one thing I have learned, is that we don't get enough feedback from them, or we ask the wrong question.
Yeah. I don't know what you'd say, Linda, but my experience has been that you need to go with some initial set of questions, but based on that learning, you need to go around again with a different set.
Yeah.
And then once you've learned that,
yeah,
go around again with a different set. And as
yeah.
you go around each time, you'll get more and more insight.
Yeah.
But don't expect to get all that on the first go.
Yeah, no, and I think how we mentioned it before too is look at what's the job to be done first. What's the job that it's going to do? Then who's involved in solving that job? And I generally only ask one question at the very beginning. What needs to happen for you to have a great experience with that job? Which is what we did with that gentleman. That's how we got the 51 things that the market wanted. And I think we had 5 parts of the value chain involved in that process.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question.
So does anyone else have any other questions? We're well over time here at 1:45. Or we wrap up. I mean, we might have missed a few questions. We will email them to the panellists, the ones that we've missed, and ask them to answer to the group, as we do have a copy of the chat bot. Yeah, so thanks again, and thank you so much, Linda, Ian, Melissa. You've really, you know, very aligned with what Dream Launch is about, which is, you know, giving people, business owners, startups, the confidence to take their idea forward and to create something out of that, as in Dream Launch's motto, bring ideas to life, and building prototypes. We look forward to keeping in touch with all of you, particularly the panellists, because they're part of our partnership team, and if you've got any issues, you can see their websites there, and you're able to contact them at any point as to us. And our next webinar will be on the 2nd of September. We have a US company CEO talking to us about probably something similar around market validation, around the notion of selling before you build. It's a huge issue that, you know, we've only really skated on the surface today. You can see that we've having gone over time with these three knowledgeable people with so much experience, we've only just really touched the tip of it. Anyway, I hope that's been enjoyable for everyone. And as I said, you're more than welcome to hang around and chat a bit longer if you like, but I understand the time of day that most people might want to go now.
Thank you, Alex and Hamid. Fantastic.
Thank you, everyone, for all the efforts, all the knowledge you shared. I hope you all enjoy.
Thanks, Simon.
Very good. I better go and have some lunch.
Take care.
Bye.
It is that time of day.
Yes. Thank you to everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And thank you, David,
Thanks.
from Think Innovation, as he was one of our partners in this event today.
Yes, thanks, David.
Thank you for having us. Looking forward to the next one.
Surely.